Hey, good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining this month's live stream, Apparel with Purpose, Creating Belonging Through Connection and Care. Really excited about today's guest, Lauren Friedman. She has a very much aligned organization, Merch with the Perp, that I'm excited to dive into as the show goes along. Wanted to start off just by giving a few updates about Cherry Willow and our work. If you've been following along with our social channels, I'm sure you're aware that it is National Homelessness Awareness Month here in November. So we've been trying to put out content that educates people on the policies that are being enacted right now and how you can take action in your community. So if you're watching this right now and you want to be part of the solution, there was a recent HUD policy that is going against all of the data-backed solutions that Housing First philosophy embodies. Instead, they are trying to take away funding, which may directly jeopardize 170,000 people across the country and their access to secure housing. So if this bill does go through, that is going to be an extreme influx of people experiencing homelessness on an already burdened system. So a few things that you can do is reach out to your local representative. Call their office is always better than a canned email. But if you don't have time to make a phone call, go out to the National Alliance to End Homelessness. They have frameworks that can be sent to your senator, your congressperson, your local representative to advocate for the funding of Housing First solutions so that we do not risk losing all of this progress that we've made over the last 40 years in the homelessness industry. At Cherry Willow, we exist to help address that public perception change and really educate people that it's not failures of individuals, but systemic failures that lead to homelessness in the largest country in the world and the largest economy in the world. And so please, take initiative, take action in your community. It takes all of us in order to affect change, and your voice does matter. So please do those things. We also have some really exciting news on the Cherry Willow front. We've had a lot of partnerships that we are going to announce. So please continue to follow our social media pages. Chris does an incredible job putting out content for us. That's also educational and then also highlights the amazing organizations that we've partnered with and helps them further their mission and impact in their communities. I'm wearing my Pedal for Progress California shirt because we have the documentary that's going to be released this month during National Homelessness Awareness Month. Really excited for you all to be able to watch that. Humanity was the filmmaker that we partnered with, and Anya did an incredible job of capturing the stories of people experiencing homelessness and 5 nonprofits that we met along the way. So we also have another Pedal for Progress ride, which I'll be able to announce on next month's show. So stay tuned for more information about that. And with all of those updates about Cherry Willow, I would love to bring in, yes, it does, Shauna, appreciate you. I would love to bring in today's guest, Lauren Friedman, to talk a little bit about her organization, Merch with a Perp. Hey, Lauren.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'd love for you to just be able to introduce yourself to our audience. For anyone that's joining from Lauren's audience, my name is Matt Fogarty. I'm the founder of Cherry Willow Apparel. We are a mission-driven nonprofit that works to highlight, use apparel as a way to get organizations' message out in the community. We are a fundraising, marketing, and branding partner, and also a content partner for nonprofits and businesses that want to support people experiencing homelessness. And I was really excited to learn a little bit about Merch with the Perp, as it seems like we're on very similar missions and very similar ways that we're executing on that. So Lauren, I'd love for you to introduce yourself to our audience here.
Yes, thank you so much. And we really are on very similar parallel paths here of really helping humanity in a variety of different ways. Thank you so much for having me. And I love your mission and how it really aligns to what I'm doing. So I'm Lauren Friedman. I'm the founder and CEO of the Why Go Project. It's actually from a Pearl Jam song, Why Go? And the line is, maybe someday another child won't feel as alone. And that was my original goal here, was to start a pediatric complex trauma nonprofit. And then as this vision evolved, I actually extended it beyond just the nonprofit into a full-scale enterprise level business. So I have multiple lines of revenue and multiple businesses. And one of them is Merch with a Perp. That's purpose, healing centered anxiety relief tools and products, with a portion of the proceeds funding the pediatric complex trauma nonprofit, the WIGO Foundation. So, Merch with a Perp is really simply that. And it's our mission is to help those feel empowered, inspired, get through each day, but also give back to the community, because everyone has something from which to heal, and not everyone has the tools or support that they need. So the WIGO project at a fundamental level is to educate, empower, and support others in just their journey of being a human. Being human is really hard.
Yeah, that's definitely true. And certainly now more than ever, I feel like, community is really important. And so it's really cool that you're putting yourself out there and, really building that community. So I'd love to start off just by asking about your origin story and, how you got started with WIGO Foundation. And then also like the Merch with the Perp. I wonder if we have any similarities in terms of how we ended up utilizing apparel and merchandise to help fund our missions and help get the word out there. So I'd love for you to speak on that.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much. And so nice to see people are loving this. Thank you. So my trajectory is like a little bit different than others. I spent the last 20 years in advertising and technology, and I found out that when I was almost 40 that I was in lifelong survival mode. Both of my parents were therapists. I was in therapy since I was 5 after my dad's first suicide attempt, and nobody understood the mind-body connection until I was almost 40. So I was in lifelong survival mode, and on the outside, and even to me, it looked like I was functioning at a really high level. I had thought-provoking questions as a child, and I was told that I was a genius at around 2 years old. But I also was told at the same time that I was a shame to the family because I was throwing up from eating. So those were the things that kind of lived inside me my whole life, and it's positioned me for success, right? Because I'm always trying to prove myself, but it also positioned me for failure because I didn't understand why I was throwing up. Like, why would a 2-year-old throw up? I wasn't fat, right? I wasn't trying to be bulimic, but my body was reacting to the environment around me. So it took me all those years. And while I was doing that, I've lost my whole family. I've lost my job 6 times after M&A and divestiture. I've had a prolific but volatile career. I've had a prolific but volatile family life. And then I also had a prolific but volatile marriage for almost 20 years. My ex's family was actually stealing from us in the family business for the last 20 years. So when I lost my job for the 6th time in June of 2023, 5 days before my 40th birthday, I was interviewing internally and externally, and I realized that I was having the same somatic responses to interviewing that I was just learning how to live in my body at that time for the first time, that I had to just life. And I was like, well, if I have to listen to my body in one part of my life, then I really have to listen to it throughout the rest. So prior to that, I had already wanted to, when I got diagnosed with all of this and I started going through my own healing journey, like I've lost and gained over 100 pounds multiple times. I have crazy stories. I've also like broken my arm 6 times as a child, 7 times. I have crazy stories of how my body responded. But when trauma takes you out of your body and into your head, so if you're not in your body, you don't know that that's happening. So I lived with a 39-year stomach ache, and I didn't even know it. I only recognized it by the absence of a stomach ache during a trauma retreat in 2022. So when you start to peel back the layers of your life and you start to see all these things going on, you're like, hey, I want to help others, because psychotherapy wasn't helping to me, right? I needed a somatic level of therapy, and that's what trauma therapy does, and that's what healing at a somatic level does, because that's really the only way to heal. So my original goal for this was to start this pediatric complex trauma nonprofit, and I didn't have a name, I didn't know anything, but I knew I wanted to help kids because both my parents were social workers. I come from an altruistic family, and I knew that I've been involved in a pediatric cancer nonprofit for the last decade plus. And I knew that I wanted to start something similar, right, and model it. So my original goal was to keep my job in advertising and technology and then scale this. And when I lost my job and I was trying to figure out how to bring the for-profits and nonprofits together, this kind of came to light because I was wearing hats called that said, "Don't be a Richard," and people would stop me in the middle of the street for years before this, and they'd be like, "Where did you get that? Where did you get that?" And I was like, "Okay, cool. Like, people want this." I've always gotten stopped in the middle of the street. It didn't matter if I was 300 pounds or 150 pounds. People just want to talk to me, even if I didn't want to talk to them, you know? So I always knew I was going to do something with this. At first, I thought it was going to be a perfume that I was going to recreate called Reframe, which maybe down the line, but it costs a lot of money to launch a perfume. And I'm bootstrapping this. So as I started to bring things together and people were stopping me, like just when I'm walking, I was like, you know what? I always knew there'd be merch, but I brought it up ahead of time because I was like, people are asking for this. And it took me a while to figure out how to actually do it and whether I was going to have inventory. So I do have a lot of water bottles because it's very serendipitous that we're meeting today, because last night I had a water bottle for the last since the end of 2018 up until last night that I lost in a taxi cab, not an Uber, nothing attached to any digital footprint that I could even pick it up. And I never take taxi cabs, and I never lose my water bottle. I've taken it internationally, and people would stop me and ask me where I got it because it looked so cool, and it had all these motivational stickers on it. So I call it mantra moments, because there's one sticker that said, "Beautiful human, you could do hard things," and that really, honestly, it saved my mental health, and like it really got me through some of the hardest times before I was being treated properly for complex trauma and adrenal fatigue. I was having flashbacks and wetting the bed while I was interviewing at Amazon, Google, Oracle, and I still secured jobs. So I recreated a lot of these stickers myself, and you can all find them on whygoproject.com, merch with a perp. But these stickers were things that just really helped me live. And I also stopped drinking, and I realized my issue is sex and love, because everything's an attachment issue. So I am going to be doing an after dark about that. But that water bottle also helped me because I put electrolytes on it. I carried everywhere. And, you know, it has there's a lot of different use cases for it, but people would stop me and ask me where they got it. So I was like, you know what, I'm not a designer. I started recreating all of these things. I went into advertising because I was going to be a copywriter. So I'm bringing that to this mission. But the whole goal is to help people feel empowered throughout their day. And mantras help. What you say to yourself matters. How you speak to yourself matters. And it may just look like a silly sticker, but when I lost my whole family, my job, I didn't know what was going on in my body. I was so scared. I couldn't drive. And I've never been had an accident. I've had crazy things happen that live in your body. I was able to, thank you so much, Shauna. I was able to lean on these stickers. I remember looking up during a workout and just seeing the sticker that said, "Beautiful girl, you could do hard things." And I've expanded it to human, right? And I was like, I could do this. I can get through this moment. And these stickers really became my lifeline, as sad as that is, because I realized I started going through really hard problems. I've been going through really hard things, with items, since I was a child. Like, there's a scrunchie that I had when I was 5 that like I still have, and I don't use it, but like it got me through those moments. So I've been bracing myself for when I either dropped my water bottle too many times after 7 years or almost 8 years of having it, or I lost it, and I still cried, but I know I'm going to get through it, and I'm going to recreate it now with all my own stickers. So here we are.
Yeah, that's quite the story. And a couple of things that really stuck out to me was, how you spoke about trauma. That is something that I feel like everyone can relate to in some form or fashion. Like, most people have experienced some level of trauma.
Everybody
and
has.
then like tying it into homelessness, that's an area where I work to help address perception change.
Yeah.
Because most people, when they're thinking of homelessness, they don't necessarily think trauma. But if you think about the experience of not knowing where you're going to sleep that night,
Yeah.
sleeping in a tent, unsheltered, sleeping in a
That's
more than
trauma.
likely overcrowded homeless shelter with hundreds of other people. These are things that are very challenging to navigate. And that's why, I mentioned housing first solutions getting funding pulled away from. But that's why those solutions work, is because you
Yeah.
provide someone a safe space so that they can have a foundation with which to make progress from. Versus,
I agree with you.
yeah, that's just like the treatment approach right now. They're trying to fund forced treatment programs, which, if someone's not in a headspace to be able to work on themselves and make progress, you're just flushing money down the toilet, essentially. If you look at the amount of people that have gone through rehab multiple times and it's not successful, like, they have to buy into it first. And so that's, for me, whenever I speak about trauma and homelessness, I try to relate that to people, because like
Yeah.
that, you know.
people don't understand homelessness is it's not a personal problem. Like you said, it's a systemic problem. As is trauma, by the way. It's generational, it's epigenetic. It lives in
Yeah.
our genes and it becomes more pronounced by our environments. And what's interesting about what you're doing and what I'm doing, and I think there's a lot more for us to do in the future, because I love your mission, and I think that the perception change is so needed. I mean, quite honestly, I lost my job 2.5 years ago, and I was the one who's making money. My ex didn't even get qualified for the apartment that I'm living in right now. So when my lease is up in April, technically, like, I don't know what I'm going to do. And that is scary, right? For the first time in my life, like, I don't have the money to even co-sign, to sign something for myself. And I don't have family. And like, I understand that. But what's interesting too is I have a photographic and audiographic memory from like under the age of 2, which most people don't have, number one, but number 2, don't have with this level of quote unquote trauma, which I didn't even realize I had. And everybody has trauma. It's just something that overwhelms your ability to cope or it contradicts your worldview. And when I did some research and tried to figure this out, I realized it's from amygdala activation. I'm meeting actually like a doctor who works in this space. But what I realized too is people that have this, that are documented with this, now this is like a very small amount of people, they became homeless. And I literally was thinking about that earlier today, before our show. I was like, I'm part of a group of people that become homeless, like, because it's really overwhelming to your brain when every single thing reminds you of something. And unless you have the coping mechanisms, like, I feel so fortunate that I got this far in my life, because it's really overwhelming, and that could lead to homelessness. It could lead to job loss. It could lead to addictions. So everything is trying to escape ourselves. And those people that are losing their funding, like, I'm losing my ACA benefits are also at risk right now, and I never had to deal with that in corporate America. So it is really terrifying, and that doesn't give people a safe space to build a foundation. And when the government is trying to take away their monies, it's just like, what kind of society do we live in? If 50% of the population men, which is like, I'm working with veterans, I'm working with men, I'm working with families, I'm working with all different groups of people, but I'm helping them find different resources through those things. I call myself the trauma translator in workshops and speaking engagements. But when 50% of our population is in crisis, what kind of society do we have? And then our government is trying to take away the only support that we have as a society. Like, how do people live? And homelessness isn't something to be shameful of. Like, we really do need to change this perception. It's something that everybody has to worry about these days. It's not just for the poor. Like, I hear on the news, like, people are living, the lower incomes living paycheck to paycheck. And I'm like, have you talked to like the upper middle class people who have been living paycheck to paycheck, and they have things they can't afford and properties they can't afford, and they don't know what to, like, let's be honest about what's going on in society.
Yeah. I mean, and I think also when you look at, like our first topic of the day, is creating belonging, and connection builds every home. And it's like, I think a lot of the mental health and physical health, a lot of issues are tied into people don't feel like they belong. People don't feel valuable. And in our society, we're not deemed as valuable unless we're capable of creating a profit for either ourselves or someone else. And I think that is wrong, that from a societal standpoint, in the wealthiest nation in the world, we have the ability to create a free market. And by free, I mean a market in which everyone has housing, food, and healthcare. That if you're able to create a system where those are the foundation, then that is a free market, because then people can go out and create value and create abundance for themselves or others, but they have the security of knowing that they have somewhere to live. They have food to eat, and they have somewhere to go if they get sick. And that is something that, if you look at nations that have done the best job addressing homelessness, Finland is one of the examples. And that's what they did. They provided housing as a baseline, that anyone who wanted housing could get housing, no questions asked. And then they surrounded that with the support services, and they built community around those individuals. And that's what the housing first philosophy is about. It's about providing that housing and surrounding with community and support systems, so that someone can actually make progress and work towards becoming the best version of themselves. And I think, unfortunately, this administration, they're much more concerned about stoking division. They're stoking fear. And I think they're doing all of that in an effort to maintain control and maintain the status quo, in which the top and the wealthy people continue to funnel more and more wealth, more and more resources away from middle class, working class, and poor people and families.
No, I mean, that's exactly what's happening. And one of the inspirations behind this is not just, you know, what everything you're talking about. I'm getting chills as I say this because my parents are shining down. So happy that you and I are having this conversation. So my dad grew up in the projects in East New York, and you wouldn't think me being a white girl who with this career with my background, you wouldn't think my dad grew up in the projects, but he did. And he was able to take advantage of every opportunity given to him, and he took himself out. He actually got into Harvard on a dare. He didn't go, but that's how smart he was.
Wow.
So, and that's the thing. And like, you generally, he was the only white kid in his neighborhood. And this is when, like, this is before Brooklyn. It was in East New York and Brooklyn. This is before Brooklyn was gentrified. He was like, like, things didn't really scare him, but he always taught me at a very young age. Like, we'd be driving through places, and let's say we went through projects, and he would be like, "Don't be afraid of the white man. Be afraid." He was like, "Don't be afraid of the black man. Be afraid of the white man." He's like, "The black man can't help where society keeps them, but the white man is what you should be afraid of." And the older I get, the more I understand him, and I'm really grateful for those moments because I'm doing this too to help those communities that have just been forgotten and neglected. And I mean, look at the veterans, look at what's going on too. Like, I mean, we could talk all day about what's happening at a federal level, but we won't have to do that. But the whole thing is truly is helping people feel less isolated. And that's my whole mission, is maybe someday another human won't feel as alone. Like, that's why I called it the Why Go Project, because I felt alone since I was a child, and I still feel really alone. And I reach out to people and I'm like, "Hey, I need help." And I still don't get the responses that I need. And, I had to find it within myself. And that only can happen because I feel safe in my environment. But if I don't have a place to live, how do I have any stability in my life? So, and I'm not saying that's going to happen to me, but that's a fear that, like, when I was really unwell in 2021, I remember saying that to my trainer at the time, and he was like, "What are you talking about? You're not going to become homeless." And then I was like, when I started reading these, like, things about what people with my type of brain have, I was like, yeah, I could see how this happens, because people don't generally do well in school, and then it affects their whole life. And these are generational things that happen in society. And as a society, we have to be responsible for each other. We can't just be responsible for ourselves. It's just not how society works.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I think there are a lot of neurodivergent folks that, the systems were not set up to empower them. I'm a big fan of history and philosophy. And if you look at, like, the education system, how it was constructed the way that it is was designed to create, like, factory workers and soldiers.
Yeah.
And that's why there's a bell. Like, it was not inspired to create freedom of thought, to provoke curiosity. Now, I do think within the education system, there are thousands of wonderful teachers that are genuinely invested in their students. And, like that, there's a lot of great people working in these systems that were not designed for success. And that's why, if you look, like, internationally, where the United States ranks in education, we're not near maybe even the top 10%, as the last I've checked. And, a lot of that is because these systems were originally not designed to, value. I think that, like, the Montessori education system, where it's more interactive, you're learning through play. If you look at, like, the neuroscience behind it, we learn 20 times faster through playing
Exactly.
games we do through, lectures and reading. So I think that there are a lot of people that are working and now having that research. But there's so many broken systems in this country that I think a lot of people don't understand. We're created intentionally, and they're working as they are supposed to. Because
100%. Yeah.
they're benefiting the people who created them, and they're highly profitable.
What's interesting about what you just said, so I do so my background is in advertising and technology. And so when I went to trauma therapy for the first time, I was like, why did no one pick up on this? Why have I been wasting the last 38 years of my life in therapy? Why did none of the therapists I lived with, none of the therapists they were friends with, why did no one get this? And what she said to me was, what fires wires. And I was like, what does that mean? And and to me, the way I was able to understand it was based in technology. So everything we're talking about is still going to exist, right? We can't change the world overnight, but we could regulate our nervous systems. And regulating our nervous systems and taking care of our inner child sounds like all hokey stuff, but that is how we succeed. And that's what I want to bring to every person in society. I am working with veteran nonprofits. I'm working with autism people, because there's a big crossover between trauma and autism. Like, I was having sensory issues. I was having sensitivity to light, to sounds, motion. It was terrifying to me. And I never felt that way in my life. And I just think that there's so much more that our society really needs to learn. And the only way we could do that, the only way we could do it is with a regulated nervous system. And that's the thing that I am bringing to this. Because, yeah, thank you so much, Tyrone. I can't read, but like that's the thing. That's what, as a trauma translator, I want to help people who are out of work, who are looking, who are like those homeless people need a regulated nervous system. They need a safe space, but they also need a place that they could also find ways to regulate their nervous system. So if you ever do something like that, I would love to collab with you on that. That's like something that's very near and dear to my heart, and that's what I'm doing. I'm bringing it to each community. I have a whole thing for the advertising and technology community because I do think in neuroscience. Because once I learned that, I was like, this just makes total sense. Like when you think about informing and training AI, that's exactly what we do with our brains, right? If we're working with faulty logic, right, or siloed data sets that aren't part of like a holistic view, then we're never going to be able to heal, because healing is not just in your body or in your mind. It's a holistic view, and it's every part of your life. It's every part of decision, every decision that you make, and it's pervasive. And the people that you're working to help, they need it more than anybody because they've never had anybody help them. That's how they became homeless. And like, how many vets that fought for our country become homeless because of their extreme trauma responses that make them incapacitated. Like I went to an industry event last week from my former industry. I went to 3 events last week, and the only one that I felt a trauma response in that I never felt before was in my previous industry, because I had lost my job so many times that when I started hearing about that content, I was like, oh my gosh, this feels like danger. And my body acted like I was being chased by a tiger. And I had to get the F out of there as soon as it was done. But I never felt it before because I never was in my body enough. So when people have the ability to regulate their nervous systems and get in their body, their whole lives can transform. That's something I would love to chat with you about offline, is how we could collab on that, because I think that could really help that community.
Yeah, 1,000%. I mean, I've done a lot of research and reading and a lot of experiential learning because I've had a couple of loved ones that have battled different mental health issues. And so in order to learn, how to be there and support them, I wanted to approach it from a clinical standpoint as best I could and be objective. And so that's when, you do learn about like what's necessary to show up. And so for Cherry Willow, I created as a brand to stand for unconditional love. I think if we show up with unconditional love for people, that's what's necessary, especially if they're not in a place where they can love themselves.
Exactly. But you have to love yourself first in order to do that, because I used to show up for everybody, but I didn't love myself. My talk track in my head was, you're fat, you're ugly, no one ever shows up for you, like all those things. And that was making me sick. Like it didn't matter how many, I was doing 14 hours a week of CrossFit, by the way, while I was almost 300 pounds, and I was starving myself, and I was taking 60 laxatives a night. And it was because, and it didn't matter what I did on the outside, right? When the talk track in my head is that. So it took me a really long time to love myself, and you could only show up for others once you could show up for yourself. And so I think that's the important thing here too, is that you were able to find, love for yourself, so then you could share it with the world, as have I. But unless you could love yourself first, don't try to love anyone else.
Yeah. I mean, and that's I think what a lot of people do is they try to justify their existence or them being themselves by showing up for others. But they don't do it because they love themselves. They do it because like no one will love me unless I am doing this, and so
it's a fun response.
Yeah. And when we're able to reframe that and really just work on loving yourself and loving all of yourself, I think is really important. Like not just loving the good things or your positive attributes, but recognizing that, the things that you struggle with or your vices, they're part of who you are. And I think a lot of people, they don't allow themselves to process what they're feeling. Most people's mechanism is avoidance. And at least that I've come across with, especially when it comes to trauma. And you're like, no, I don't have any trauma. And they don't bring it to the surface. And then it just, it just boils up underneath, and it creates all of these other issues, whether that's anxiety, whether that's depression, weight loss, mood gain, weight gain, rapid mood changes. All of these things are because you're not allowing yourself to feel these emotions and work through them. And so that's where I've studied a lot of philosophy.
Yeah.
And, it's like you have to let yourself feel it. And that's
Well,
something that
no, because
I,
people don't know how. That's the
yeah,
problem. Like I didn't know how to have feelings. I was told explicitly, like, you're not allowed to have feelings. Your feelings are too big. Like after my dad tried to kill himself again and in my car. So like I didn't have feelings. And not having feelings is what literally almost killed me. But the thing is I didn't know how to have feelings. So you need to teach people, right? Beyond like just like, hey, feel your feelings. You need to teach them how to do it in a way that feels safe for them, which is how nervous system regulation really helps. It really helps crime prevention. It's really like how we save our society and humanity and ourselves.
yeah, yeah, I think,
Everything you're talking about is so beautiful.
and just like looking inward, and
Yeah.
like that's like box breathing is something that is one of
Yes.
my favorite methodologies
Me
for,
too.
nervous system regulation, because you can do that in any setting that you're in,
Yeah.
and for those unfamiliar with box breathing, it's a 4-step framework, where you breathe in for 4 seconds, hold for 4 seconds, breathe out for 4 seconds, then hold for 4 seconds. And so by doing that, it actually allows your nervous system to regulate. And so anytime that I'm feeling anxious or, feeling overwhelmed, that's something where I'll try to center myself, ground myself if I can, if barefoot in the soil, in the grass, I don't think we
Exactly.
do that. We're disconnected from the earth a lot. But these are all things that I've learned just through, kind of having to navigate what are
Yeah.
these feelings? How do I let them out? And now, this is what I want to do, is encourage others to kind of go through a similar process.
I love that. That's literally my mission too. I actually have a brand partner that I work with called Camuso, and it's a breathing necklace that allows you to actually breathe out, take an inhale and breathe out slowly, right? Because that's how you stabilize and regulate your nervous system. So that's something I always have with me. Whether or not I use it is a different story, but I do
Yeah.
use it. Another breathing technique that I like as well. Like I was afraid, like when I went, so I ended up having to go to a trauma retreat for 6 days in 2022. And when I got there, I couldn't even say the word heart, let alone touch my heart and my stomach at the same time or breathe out loud. That's how, and like you wouldn't know, I had a successful career. I was almost 40 years old. I've done so many things, but I couldn't do those things. I was so immobilized. Like I literally hated myself. I was so out of touch with myself. I didn't know what being in your body meant. And so I've done all of these experiential treatments, if you will, because you don't know it unless you do it. And one of the things, I also have a certification in yin yoga now. Yoga used to make me full of rage. It really is medicine, like rest
Yeah.
as ritual. It's beautiful. But one of the other breathing techniques I really like is the one nostril breathing, is you breathe in and out through one nostril and then you switch. That one is like, if you want to like calm yourself down immediately, that's a really good one too.
Cool. I'm not too familiar with that one, so I'll definitely have to check it out.
We'll do it another time. We'll do it on my podcast.
Sounds good. But I'd love to go into our second
Yeah.
topic now, which was, really a little bit more backstory around merch with the perp. I mean, wearable empathy is certainly something that I'm very familiar with. And if you're watching Cherry Willow, you're very familiar with our work in that space. So I'm really curious about the Don't Be a Richard hat. If you could maybe explain a little bit about that, and then, how you kind of came up with the concepts and all the different hats that you have out there.
Yeah. So I have about, I think it's right now it's around like 12 SKUs in the hats. I've redone them. They all have different colors and stuff. So it might be around 42, but there's like about 12 or like 15 slogans, maybe more now. I have to look it up. But the Don't Be a Richard was just like, don't be a D, And I got it as like a joke in 2022, and I wore it. I saw someone like on one of the channels had it, and I was like, I want that hat. So I bought the hat and I started wearing it, and I was on a trip to Seattle. I was taking a red eye back, and the pilot came over to me in the waiting area and he's like, can I take a picture of your hat? And I was like, sure. And he took a picture of it, and people would stop me in it. And then on the way out that morning, he was like, thanks again, Richard, or see you soon, Richard. So after that, I didn't realize like how far this had, and I had posted something about it, and I saw it recently, and I ended it with like, why go home? And I was like, wow, that was like a very like telling post. I had no idea this was all going to be part of it. So it started with the hat, and I have ones, go heal yourself. Instead of go F yourself, go heal yourself.
Yeah.
I have drinking my water, minding my business. Healing is the hottest. Healing equals freedom. Like I have West Coast Soul, East Coast Hustle. Basically all of the stickers have an associated hat with them for the most part. Unless like the words are too many or too big, but I've been able to fit a lot on hats. But yeah, the whole purpose is to have a little humor, have fun, if you're going to wear a hat, wear my hats, and also give back. But yeah, this was literally market feedback.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's kind of, we're very similar in that we have a lot of different terminology. Like humanize, not otherize is one of my phrases for people experiencing homelessness.
I beautiful that. I love that.
Yeah. Like otherize is definitely something that I feel like most people do to help themselves just navigate, really avoid helping the people experiencing homelessness. So like, oh, they're not like me. And so that's where like that empathy over everything, that's another one of the
I love
phrases that we
that.
use. But again, it's just kind of encourage people to see themselves in others. Because like going back to the philosophy and like universal beliefs, like I believe that we're all one. We're all one living organism in the universe, and we do too much to separate ourselves. And if we look more at what we have in common, it can really lend itself to more compassion, more empathy, and kind of building community, which I know is our last theme, community as connection, and kind of breaking that cycle of isolation. So that's the goal for our merchandise, is to, if you're wearing Cherry Willow apparel and someone experiencing homelessness sees you, that's an opportunity for connection right there. And
Yeah.
then they know, whether they reach out to you or not, they know that you at least care about them, and that you are interested in being a part of the solution. And I always encourage people, if you do come across someone experiencing homelessness, to introduce yourself and just ask their name. That small act of humanness, small act of kindness, can go a long way. And
I
you have no
agree.
idea the last time that someone stopped and talked to this individual.
Yeah.
So that's something I think is really important, and it's really cool to see you using the same concept of like apparel can create these really cool conversations.
I couldn't agree with you more. Like, I live in New York City and there's homeless people everywhere. And when I carry around protein bars with me all the time. And I don't always have cash. I really just don't. But I always have a protein bar. So I'll always give people protein bars. I've gone in over the years and bought people. I would rather give them food, ask their name. I agree with you wholeheartedly. Like, I smile at people because you don't know when people need a smile, right?
Yeah.
Like, they just need someone that gives an F about them, and like, I feel really isolated too. Like, I was thanking the people that work in my building, because I was like, if I didn't see them every day, like I said this in Spanish, cada dia, I would have no one to talk to every day. And I was like, if I died here, like, would anyone even know? And it's scary. So
Yeah.
when people are experiencing these really hard things, they just need a little bit of humanity. And also, one of my things is connection changes everything, because I agree with that. I let thoughts pass like clouds, because that's also really powerful. And I agree with you with the oneness. Like, everything about me is a nature, oneness, universe. Like, and that's the thing. We're all each other, and we all need to act like it more. And this isn't like some like hippie, like love needs to be free, but like, let's also just like, don't be a Richard. Like, think
Right.
before you act. Like, don't cancel people's health insurance for no reason. Like, this is absurd.
Yeah. And well, I think when you go back to isolation, that was something about COVID that I think was a universal experience. And I'm always a big fan of positive reframes. That's
Me too.
kind of going back to our trauma conversation earlier.
Yep.
I think most people carry around their trauma and they drag it like it's in a sack, and it's just weighing them down constantly. Where what I was able to do with the trauma that I experienced was kind of look at it and then rearrange it to build into stair steps. And that, because I endured that trauma, I actually became the person that I am today, which is someone that I was finally proud of and loved. And that's certainly a really challenging thing to have gone through. But I think others have an opportunity to look at it. If you can take that lens and reframe it, you are who you are, and you are extremely strong because of the things that you've endured. And so that's a reframe that I try to provide. And then kind of like going into that isolation piece, when we all were in COVID, we saw how isolated we were and how that affects people's mental health. And that's something that I love, that what you're about is kind of bringing people together. And that's what apparel allows us to do. In the digital age, it's really cool. We can connect. I'm in Chicago, you're in New York. But it also allows you to disconnect from the person right next to you. And so that's what I love about apparel.
And from yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah. Exactly. Disconnecting from yourself is the worst kind of disconnection, because once you do that, and that's the thing with carrying around your trauma, and I honor your journey, and I think it's beautiful that you've been able to do all of this, because I didn't know, I have a best friend since we were 3 years old, and she said to me a few years ago, like after all this, she's been one of the biggest supporters, and she's like, you just need to do something with yourself. Like people want to talk to you, they want to hear your story. So she's been a big supporter of this. But she said a few years ago, she's like, you carried like the weight of the world on your shoulders. And I was like, why did no one tell me that that wasn't something I had to do? Like I thought I had to save myself and everyone around me, because trauma is really pervasive, and it's a human condition. It's not one thing. It doesn't, like, I never considered that I had trauma, even though I've literally, like, I'm literally a walking picture of complex trauma, but I didn't know I had trauma. I didn't know I had anxiety, and people don't want to carry it around, but they don't know how to let it go either. And people think, through psychotherapy and talk therapy that they're getting to the root of it, and they aren't. So when you get with the community, right, and you find all of these ways to lean on others and find the support, and also just find support in yourself, because and all the support in the world isn't going to matter unless you could really find the support in yourself. And when you could do that, then you could really expand and help others, and then really begin to be a part of that community. But the thing with merch, like one of the reasons, like when you talk about reframe, one of the reasons, I met people at my trauma retreat in 2022 that were like me, things that I was told that was wrong with me, not even by society, but by my mom. And I met people that were like me, and I was like, wait, that's a trauma response. That person also had something major happen at this age too, and they can't do whatever. And that's one of the reasons why I am starting the Pediatric Complex Trauma nonprofit, and Merch with a Perp happened, but also the reframe of it. Everything is about a reframe, which is why my perfume eventually will be called Reframe, because it's a reframe version of the scent. But it's true, and that's the thing. I also do EMDR. I don't know if you've ever done that, but there's a lot of different ways to find healing, and not everyone can do all of those things like us, right? But you could just start with one small step. Like I heard you say something before that reminded me of, like, I call it a Seek Parvis Magna moment, greatness from small beginnings. And it's like one small thing, whether it's breathing or just like thinking about things differently, like, and that's how you can help yourself, so you then can help others. But I think it's beautiful that you were really able to alchemize your journey into something such, like, so beautiful. And really, there's not a lot of people doing what you're doing. There's really not. It's really a beautiful mission that you have.
I appreciate it. Yeah, it was certainly something that, I wouldn't have signed up for had you told me that, like, this is what I was going to go through. But
you're so good.
Yeah. But I'm proud of myself that I was able to take it. So I actually have a book that I'm working to get published as well. It's titled Ego, Death, and Enlightenment. And so that was kind of like what my experience was, where this trauma that I had been carrying, this burden that I hadn't shared with anyone, and I didn't share because I didn't want anyone else to get hurt. I was trying to protect the people in my life that I loved. And because I was able to compartmentalize, like, and attribute any of the negative actions towards the mental health or towards the disorder, because I still wanted to show up. And that's how I learned how to show up with unconditional love. And so that's what I want to create with, Cherry Willow, like I said, is a brand for people to be able to show up with unconditional love for each other. And the goal of writing the book was to be able to showcase, like, how you can look at things differently, like just different universal experiences that everyone goes through at different stages in their life, and how you can use those things as, fuel for your fire, rather than, someone that's stomping it out. And I think, to your point, like, there oftentimes are very well-meaning people in your life that are just, they feel like they're trying to help you, but that can kind of dampen your light. If your light is not valued by society or people, your dream, people tell you it's unrealistic. But if that's who you are, and expressing who you are is instead of received with, praise and with support, instead you're shunned, I feel like that can cause a lot of people to be very confused. And then I think we wear masks a lot. People walk around and they're acting as what they think they should be in society, rather than taking the time to figure out who they are.
But there's not, and that's the thing, like, no one has the connection to themselves, because you need to be connected to yourself to understand that. But everyone's self-abandoning through all the different ways, whether it's work, fitness, jobs, family, having to stay busy, traveling, whatever that looks like. And to your exact point, like, a lot of people have that exact story where they felt like they don't want to, I still have a lot of people in my life that they cannot share their deepest, darkest things, because they don't want to ruin the things that are happening, the people that caused it. And people are well-meaning, right? The best intentions, it's a, I forgot, I was literally thinking this before, but like the road to hell is paved with good intentions. And like, it's all the people that hurt you, like they only know hurt, right? So they're like hurt people. And unless they have the ability to heal, they're going to keep having those same cycles of dysfunction and pass it down. So I'm a generation breaker, cycle breaker. So are you. And that's the thing, is that people do need to release those deep seated beliefs about themselves, but also those secrets, like speaking your truth, not living in shame, because it will kill you. It lives inside you, and it will destroy every part of your life. And I talk about ego death and my journey of enlightenment as well, because I've literally like lost everything, and I've had to find ways to feel good about myself when I don't have my job anymore, and I don't have all the things that so I totally agree with that. And I love that that's what you're doing. And I think that, Cherry Willow is a really special mission. And I think there's a lot more for us to do. I'm really excited about this, because I'm also writing a few books myself. I have a lot of things I'm working on that are all coming together. I had to also, I also did my own divorce. Oh no, I was just saying, I just had to do my own divorce late. Oh, sorry.
You're good. I think there was a lag on my end.
Oh, I was just saying I was a little bit busy, so I had to do my own divorce earlier this year. So now I'm all fully set for all the partnerships.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's it's interesting, because that was my process where, I stripped away everything that I thought made me who I was, because I was trying to give a relationship with the mother of my children every opportunity to be successful. And what it came to was this place where I like to describe it like the Lego movie. I don't know if you've ever seen that, but they go into Emmett, the main character's brain, and like it's blank, like just white. And that's kind of where I got to, where it was like everything that I thought made me who I was. Whether that was my identity at work, my identity as a sports fan, my identity as a friend or a brother, or golfer, whatever the case, I realized like those things didn't make me who I am, and that's how I found myself. And so it was a really, really cool experience. And to your point, like when I kind of shed that emotional weight of having to be all of these things beyond myself, it was amazing just like how things started to change for me, and how I was able to overcome challenges and difficult circumstances. Like I started Cherry Willow shortly after being laid off from a business intelligence startup. And it was the best job I had ever had. I would love the people I was working with, was making the best money I ever had. And so a lot of people, would have taken that as a bad thing. Like, oh, it only lasted 6 months. But I think it ended up being the best thing that ever happened to me, because as a result of that job, I got connected with, the best sales leader that I ever worked with. I got connected with my co-founder of Cherry Willow. And I wouldn't have had the courage to go out on my own if I had the security of a job. And I feel like jobs, it's the illusion of security, right? And that's what I think a lot of people, certainly like my parents are like, no, get a job, go to work for 40 years, have insurance, and maybe you'll be able to retire someday. And I think that version of the American dream is no longer realistic for, many people. And that's why you see a lot more people going out on their own, and especially like creating content, the content economy, and like our attention is the product now in a lot of ways. And, to your earlier point, so many people there's so many distractions out there that can prevent people from doing that work and actually becoming themselves or being connected with themselves. And so it's really cool to be connected with you, and doing similar work and encouraging people to, love themselves and be the best version of themselves.
No, I love that. I love everything you said. And I love that your children have been able to witness your own growth, because that to me, like leading by example, you could read things as much as you want. You could see as many things, but until you see somebody, actually do it in front of you and lead by example in real time, that changes everything. So your kids are very lucky that they got to witness your growth and your own expansion. It's a beautiful thing.
I appreciate that. And yeah, it's certainly something that I'm proud of, and it can be challenging for them to understand, because obviously a lot of things have changed since living in two houses, but thankfully have an incredibly healthy co-parenting relationship with their mom. And, it's great. They're thriving in both households. Getting through that transition period was a little bit challenging, but it's definitely been the best for all of us, and I'm really excited about being able to both of us have a healthy foundation to build from. And so I wanted to we're getting towards the end of the show here, so I wanted to ask you about imagining a future, where belonging is the norm, not the exception, and like how do we go about creating that future? And if there are viewers that are watching this that want to be a part of it, what's the best way for them to get involved?
Yeah, I mean, I think that what you and I are doing is taking the first step, but I think honestly everything starts with nervous system regulation. So regulate your nervous system. If you want to learn more, you can find out on whygoproject.com. I have actually a dysfunction junction dictionary where you could find all the different terms that we spoke about and more, so you could educate yourself a little bit. But there's a lot of different ways to get involved and feel less alone. And it all starts with a better society. Really all starts with you and regulating your nervous system.
Yeah, I love that. And yeah, just I want to encourage anyone out there that if you feel like you don't make a difference or can't make a difference, that could not be more untrue. Like you can do anything that you put your mind to. But it all starts with doing that work, learning about yourself, loving yourself, your whole self, and then being comfortable enough sharing that with the world. And that's something that it certainly can feel uncomfortable at times, but that's something that I reflect on a lot, where growth and comfort, those are not intersecting circles. And if there's a philosopher, the line is like, if you're not growing, you're decaying.
Yeah.
So like you can always grow. And by putting yourself out there, having those new experiences, that is the best way to grow. And if you're not failing, you're not learning. So don't be afraid of failure. Don't stay in the comfort zone. One of my other phrases is like, the comfort zone is where people begin to believe that the best things happen in the next life. And so it's like, step out of that comfort zone and just live life to the fullest each day.
Yeah. While also making sure that you're listening to your body.
Yeah.
That's I'm always gonna go back to that, because the body really does keep the score. And everything you said, like all of those hardships, like I also like did how did I choose this life? Like I know there has to be more here, right? My soul chose this for a reason, and I think that this is why. This is my soul's purpose. But also, oh my gosh, it's so exhausting. So yes, start with you, start with your nervous system, and then you can help as many people as you want, but you need to be regulated. Co-regulation is the key to a peaceful society where everyone feels like they belong.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's a great book for anyone that wants to check it out. The Body Keeps the Score.
Yeah.
There's a lot of great books. If you're interested, I can give a ton of recommendations. So please feel free to hit me up on LinkedIn or Facebook or YouTube or wherever you're at. I'd love to share, some of the things that I've learned, some of the resources that I've been able to utilize, and happy to help you if you want to start that journey of that inner work and becoming the best version of yourself. So, awesome. Was there anything else, Lauren, like as we're winding down here, that you wanted to conclude with?
No, you can find me on YouTube at Why Go Project. You can find me on Instagram at Why Go Project _ and go to whygoproject.com to shop merch with a perp. That's merch with a purpose. And you can also sign up for my newsletter, which will be dropping soon, and the podcast will be scaling. So thank you so much for having me. I really love your mission, and I love that we've had this opportunity to share all the beautiful things. I think there's a lot more for us to potentially collaborate on.
Yeah. I mean, I had a great conversation and really enjoyed having you on the show.
Thank
We'll
you.
definitely have to continue the conversation and see how we can collaborate, because there's obviously a lot of synergy between the work that we're doing. So really excited about this. So everyone that's watching, thank you so much for joining this month's live stream. Please stay connected to both Lauren and myself on social media. Follow, Cherry Willow and the Why Go Foundation, and especially with National Homelessness Awareness Month, finishing out here in November, we are going to be releasing the Pedal for Progress documentary in conjunction with Humanity. Dear America, This is Community is the title. So that'll be dropping on YouTube, and we'll make sure that we push that out across all of our social channels as well, so that you can check out the amazing trip and the amazing stories of nonprofits and the executive directors, the people they service, and people experiencing homelessness in California. So thank you.
I'm really excited for that. I'm excited to watch that. That's so cool.
Yeah, I was really thrilled with how it came out. So I appreciate it, and I'll definitely send it to you so you can check it out once it's live.
Thank you.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Lauren, for joining us. Thank you out there in the audience for watching, and I hope you have a wonderful evening.